All right, that was the ranking member of the House Intel Committee, Adam Schiff. He was responding to this New York Times breaking story that apparently a memo exists from Mr. Comey, the former head of the FBI, in which he claims, Mr. Comey claims, according to this memo, and this according to two people who read the memo, that Comey wrote shortly after he met with Mr. Trump, that President Trump said, referring to General Flynn, he is a good guy. I hope you can let this go, referring to the investigation of General Flynn. Now, we should mention the White House has denied the thrust of that memo. They said, while the president has repeatedly expressed his view that General Flynn is a decent man who served and protected our country, the president has never asked Mr. Comey or anyone else to end any investigation, including any investigation involving General Flynn. They go on, this is not a truthful or accurate portrayal of the conversation between the president and Mr. Comey. Back with our panel now, and I'm sorry I interrupted you in mid-sentence, Byron. What do you think of the latest from Mr. Schiff?
Well, actually, those are fairly measured words from him, because from Democrats you're going to be hearing a lot about, quote, obstruction of justice and about impeachment involving this. And this is, in a sense, Comey's revenge, because the story has come out that he did write a memo after every conversation with the president. The message there is, I've got more. And the New York Times said that an associate of Comey actually read part of the memo to the Times reporter, meaning that Comey has distributed this for the purpose of getting it out. So we don't know what else there is, but this is pretty bad right there.
Andrew Peak, let me switch to the other big story of the day, which again broke last night at about this time. And it involves, of course, a dispute between the way General McMaster saw the meeting between the Russians and the president last week, and the way certain sources saw that meeting or reported on that meeting later. Now, you know General McMaster. Whom do you believe? He calls the New York Times report false. Would you believe him or the sources that are quoted, by the Washington Post?
I would totally believe General McMaster. I think his credibility in Washington is almost unparalleled. That's why there was such bipartisan enthusiasm for his nomination when it was announced. But I would point out that neither he nor Secretary Tillerson nor some others disputed the fact that there was classified information disclosed. Now, in itself, that's not that big a deal. We give classified information to the Russians about ISIS reasonably frequently. But if it was offhand, then maybe there's a few more national security concerns if it wasn't pre-planned and well thought out. Well,
Mike Baker, there is one national security concern, and that's the fact that somebody is leaking classified information to the Washington Post. That in itself is a crime, but have we come to the point where perhaps the leak is worse than the substance of that leak?
Well, without knowing exactly what was discussed during the meeting with the Russians, it's hard to say, but you're absolutely right. It'd be nice to think that some intrepid investigative reporter would spend a little time looking into who exactly are all these anonymous sources that are coming at us every day at this point. Look, the precedent here is not new. All right, previous administrations have also inadvertently, at times, provided information, classified information, that in the past, including the previous administration, actually did potentially outsource this. So, you know, this is not unprecedented, but we need to, of course, we need to take it seriously. It's just at a certain point, we're all going to run out of oxygen with this breathless, drama that's going on, and it's all based on, frankly, a lack of discipline in the White House. These are a series of self-inflicted wounds that just never seem to end.
Well, Gillian, let's talk about the substance of the leak, whether it was intentional or not, whether it's true or not. Israel apparently was the source for the information that the president talked about. If you're going to believe the Washington Post account, Israel has responded, assuming that the leak stories are true. Israel has said they still have full, and this is according to the ambassador from Israel to the United States, Israel has full confidence in our intel sharing relationship with the U.S. and looks forward to deepening that relationship in the years ahead under President Trump. So it appears, if in fact the leak happened, and if in fact it came from Israel, Israel's not too upset about it.
I saw that statement put forth by Ambassador Dermer, and I think that that was to be expected. I think there's no real reason to think that if the Israelis were actually upset with the United States, they would go public with that at this point in time. The intelligence relationship between the United States and Israel is pretty airtight and is pretty sacrosanct. And I think that it's going to take a lot more than this probably to upset it, but even if it had been disturbed by President Trump's disclosure, it's not something that the Israelis are going to speak to in a public forum, because that would undermine the relationship even further. Any fallout from this is going to get hammered out in a very close hold, tight-knit group of people behind the scenes, and we're probably not going to hear about it, even in spite of political leaks coming out of the White House, coming out of the intelligence agency and the national security community. So I think that it's probably right. He's probably right that there's not going to be a tremendous breach in the relationship as a result of this, but my point is that we can't really take it at face value. We probably won't ever
Byron York, we know that the leaks themselves were illegal. You're not allowed to leak classified information, and clearly that's what the leakers themselves say, is that it was classified information the president was leaking. Do we know the motive, or do you suspect, in fact, that the motive was to undermine the Trump presidency, or was it serious concern about national security?
Look, there are people in the White House, and certainly a lot of people out of the White House, who want to get the president. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. And by the way, in the original Washington Post story that reported this, the kind of juiciest and most alarmist quote, most of them came from people described as former officials, which is probably Obama administration officials. So yes, it appears the president made a mistake. The severity of the mistake is really still in question right now. We don't quite know how serious it was and what damage it would cause, if any. So that's up in
well, the seriousness, and I'll stick with you for a second, Byron, because you're a newspaper man. The seriousness depends on how it is played by the media to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, if Israel does not consider it to be a security concern, we have to take them at their word for it. But the way that the Washington Post played this, and the way that other papers and news media played this, indicated that it was huge, when in fact it might be coming from people whose single interest is to undermine the Trump presidency.
Well, but I would say that there is the hair on fire media world, and then there's the actual world, and the question is, intelligence agencies around the world are going to evaluate this. If this did come from Israel, the Israelis are going to evaluate it. I think perhaps the best thing I've read about this today is that relations between and sharing between all of these countries will continue, because they need us more than we need them. We're really big, and they need American intelligence help. So you know, in a few weeks we can see what, if any, effect this has, but it's not a good basis for just hair on fire hysteria right now.
Okay, well.